fresh start, that's what Emma had told herself when she packed up her life and moved to Harbor Edge. The small coastal town with its picturesque landscapes, friendly locals, and a laid-back lifestyle seemed like the perfect escape from her troubled past in the bustling city. On her first day as a rookie detective, she was partnered with Tom, a seasoned cop who greeted her with an easy grin and a twinkle in his eyes. Behind his jovial demeanor, however, she could sense a veil of sadness, a mirror to her own hidden sorrows. Days turned into weeks, and Emma found herself gradually melting into the town's rhythm, her previous life becoming a faint echo. The town's tranquility was shattered one cold November morning when Emma and Tom were called to the town's bed and breakfast. The owner, an elderly woman named Martha, had been found dead in her sleep with no visible signs of struggle or break-in. The only anomaly, a single white lily placed on her nightstand. At first, the incident was dismissed as a tragic but natural death, until the second victim was found in a similar circumstance. A middle-aged bookstore owner, sound asleep in his locked apartment, another white lily adorning his bedside. Panic began to ripple through the town. Whispers of a serial killer named the Sleepwalker circulated amongst the frightened locals. Emma and Tom found themselves plunged into a race against time, the pressure mounting as more bodies turned up, all found in their peaceful slumber with the killer's eerie signature. Each crime scene was immaculate, with no DNA, no fingerprints, no footprints, nothing but the hauntingly beautiful white lilies. Despite the escalating horror, a strange pattern emerged that rattled Emma. Each victim had a direct or indirect connection with her or Tom. A chilling realization began to take root in her mind, but she quickly brushed it aside. Paranoia, she told herself, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. As the investigation reached a fever pitch, Tom's behavior began to change. His once jovial demeanor was replaced with a quiet intensity. His eyes lost their twinkle, replacing it with something darker, haunted. Emma couldn't help but feel the growing distance between them. Then, one terrifying night, the unthinkable happened. Emma, after a long day of fruitless investigations, returned home to find a white lily on her bedside table. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The blood drained from her face as she stared at the ghostly flower, its innocent purity a grotesque contrast to the menace it represented. She was the sleepwalker's next target. Hours later, at the station, she could barely suppress her trembling hands as she reported the finding to Tom, whose face paled upon hearing her account. "We'll increase the patrols around your house, Emma. And I want you to stay at the station tonight," he said, his voice taut with barely suppressed fear. As the night descended, a sense of dread loomed over Emma. She found herself in the eerily silent police station, her heart pounding with each tick of the clock. The entire town seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the sleepwalker's next move. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, shattering the silence. A patrol officer reported a break-in at the local florist. Tom and Emma rushed to the scene, their hearts pounding. They arrived to a chilling sight, an empty white lily stand. The grim pattern continued, the town paralyzed by the escalating horror. In broad daylight, people would laugh off their fear, but as the sun set, their laughter would fade, replaced by a deafening silence, broken occasionally by the wail of a distant siren or the hushed whisper of a prayer. Emma found herself drawn to Tom, their shared fear and grief bringing them closer. Yet, the gnawing suspicion in the back of her mind wouldn't fade away. She couldn't shake off the feeling that she was missing something vital, something staring right at her. Then one day, she found an old news article about Tom's wife's tragic death a few years ago. She had been found dead, peacefully asleep, a single white lily by her side. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she connected the dots. Was it possible? Could Tom be the sleepwalker? Racked with fear and uncertainty, Emma was torn between her growing affection for Tom and the horrifying possibility that he could be the killer. The thought of confronting Tom was terrifying, but the thought of another innocent life taken was even worse. She knew what she had to do. In a tense confrontation, she accused Tom, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. His reaction was one of shock and denial, but something in his eyes made her heart sink. It was the same haunted look she'd been seeing for weeks now. The climax came abruptly. Cornered and desperate, Tom admitted his guilt. The sleepwalker was no phantom, it was Tom. But he wasn't a ruthless killer. He was a tormented man, unable to control his actions while sleepwalking, his subconscious mind replaying the night his wife had died in her sleep, each murder a chilling recreation of that fateful night. Emma's world collapsed around her. The man she had trusted, even started to care for, was a serial killer. She felt a chilling dread as Tom moved closer, his face contorted in a twisted expression of grief and madness. Just as he lunged at her, there was a deafening bang, and Tom slumped to the floor, a pool of red spreading beneath him. Behind him stood a patrol officer, his face ashen, the smoking gun still in his trembling hands. In the ensuing chaos, Emma stood numb, staring at Tom's lifeless body. The nightmarish ordeal was over, but the horror of it would haunt her forever. In the aftermath of that chilling night, a deafening silence fell over Harbor Edge. The morning sun filtered through the window of Emma's office, casting long shadows over the paperwork that lay untouched. Her gaze, however, was fixed outside, where the townsfolk moved about their daily chores, their cheerful chatter and laughter unable to hide the wariness in their eyes. News of Tom's unmasking as the sleepwalker had sent shockwaves through the town. Tom, who had been their friend, their protector, was the monster they'd feared all along. A collective sense of betrayal hung heavy in the air, the jovial man they knew replaced by a haunting specter. Emma felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. The horror of Tom's deeds, the guilt of her blind trust, the regret for the man he once was, and the sickening fear of how close she had come to being his next victim. She was left with a gaping wound that no amount of time seemed capable of healing. She retreated into herself, the lively woman who'd arrived in Harbor Edge months ago, a stark contrast to the haunted figure she had become. Her days were spent in a monotonous haze, the faces of the sleepwalker's victims a constant presence in her mind. The town, too, was irrevocably changed. People now locked their doors at dusk, their once lively nights replaced with an uneasy silence. The children no longer played in the streets after sunset, their laughter replaced by hushed whispers. The sleepwalker was dead, but his shadow loomed large over Harbor Edge. Slowly, as the weeks turned into months, life began to regain some semblance of normality. The town started to heal, the haunting memories fading into the background. Emma, too, started to emerge from her shell, her resolve to protect her town stronger than ever. Her ordeal had left her scarred, but it had also made her more determined. As she sat at her desk one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of crimson and gold, she felt a strange sense of peace. The sleepwalker was gone, but he had left behind a lasting impact. He had taken lives and shattered trust, but he had also shown the town what it meant to be resilient. The horrors of the past could never be forgotten, but as the sun dipped below the horizon and the town was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, Emma knew that they would learn to live again. Despite the darkness that had once consumed them, they would find a way to fight back, to find hope in despair. Harbor Edge had survived the sleepwalker, and in its survival, it had found a new strength. In her heart, Emma knew that the nightmare was behind her, and with it, the fear that had gripped her for so long. The path to recovery would be long and arduous, but she wasn't alone. Her town stood with her, their shared ordeal a grim reminder of their past, and a beacon of hope for their future.